Never thought you kissed the truth, you somehow turned around. I must resist.
Have you ever been so enthralled by something that it just consumes you? With increasing technological advances, people are able to immerse themselves in what formerly was a niche group. As we see in videos like Cosplay Dance and Inside the Con or documentaries, we find a new distinct culture has been formed in the last few decades. It is a captivating new evolution of existing culture. Have you considered yourself to be part of nerd culture?
Yeah, I definitely would consider myself a nerd in some contexts.
I've been a nerd for a long time.
I am a nerd. I'm most definitely a nerd. I was sort of a hybrid. I was sort of half nerd, half jock.
Like, the moment that I got behind the computer and I was programming, I just had this passion for it. I really had not had much focus on really almost anything, any real passion for anything until I discovered programming.
These days I sort of use the term geek more than nerd. Same thing to me. I'm proudly a computer geek and a techno geek, absolutely. My nerdism is musical and technology, definitely. My father worked for the Department of Energy for the US government and was head of methods development in their computer department. And I would, instead of mowing the yard or taking out the trash for allowance as a kid, I would do binary codes on a computer thing, reading charts and help solder circuit boards and put in transistors and put them in the computer. And we spent months and months and months doing this thing that was someday maybe going to turn on. And finally, we came to that day and it turned on. And we had a computer in our house. It was called an Altair 8080B microcomputer or something, Heathkit. They have one at the Tech Museum, the actual same computer. It's one of the old dinosaurs that you could have ever gotten. If you were geeky enough and a nerd enough to build a computer, that was my dad.
Geek comes from the Germanic word gek, which means freak, specifically a circus freak who would bite the heads off chickens. Geeks, nerds, dweebs, and dorks are characterized by the poor social skills, mostly during their school days, starting in the 1970s. However, in 1984, the movie Revenge of the Nerds inspired them to take pride in themselves.
I would probably say I was a closet nerd. I tried to hang out with the popular kids. I kind of found myself in a weird spot where I didn't want to hang out with the people who were more openly nerdy because it wasn't socially acceptable.
Being a nerd in school is always a challenge because you get teased a lot. You're not always doing the cool stuff. You might be hanging out reading a book or learning a game or figuring out something that's intellectual rather than going out and playing football or something.
Yeah, I tried to be cool. I tried to be a football player. I tried out for, and I was about 5'9" or 5'10" when I was a freshman. I weighed 98 pounds, and I'm trying out for the football team. And meanwhile, I'm also downstairs. This is the time of the Rubik's Cube just became really popular. And I could solve the Rubik's Cube in less than a minute from full scramble. And so it was very, very obvious that I was not meant to be on the football team, even though I wanted to be, kind of popular and et cetera. And I had this vision in my mind that I could be whatever I wanted to be. But I was kind of denying my true nature, which is, I was just a nerd. I was a nerd at heart, and that's the way I always have been. And so it took a little while to me really accept that. But the more and more I went through high school, the more and more time I spent doing the things that I loved, and then started having success with that. That really made me accept that that was my destiny to be nerdy.
Some nerds prefer a more hands-on experience. While it seems that nerds prefer passive entertainment, some love to create the technology that we all use.
That's the section of society that was sort of off doing their own thing and kind of outcast, but they were figuring stuff out and being the innovators, the Steve Jobses, if you will, of the world.
I had taught myself to program. My dad brought home an Apple II Plus. And I learned how to program. I taught myself to program in BASIC when I was in 6th grade.
I would imagine that it was a caveman nerd that first figured out how to get fire started, and it was a caveman nerd that built the first wheel, and it was probably a nerd that was responsible for every piece of technology that has ever existed in the history of mankind and Western civilization. I would proudly say that most of my classroom is a bunch of nerds, and I love nerds. I think it's just they're the ones that sort of are attracted to, I think, the profession of being animator. I think it's sort of more of a introspective, highly artistic and creative personality that I tend to get in my classroom. They might not have necessarily the most extroverted social skills or what, you know, but yeah, they're highly, highly complex, amazing people that, yeah, I think going through a bit of that myself helps me definitely relate, you know.
Throughout the last few decades, nerd culture has become more and more prevalent and accepted. Although still considered to be different, they are becoming more mainstream. Shows like Big Bang Theory and song parodies like I'm Nerdy and I Know It have embraced their nerdism.
Well, nerds rule the world right now. You look at Google, Facebook, Twitter, Zynga, all the biggest companies, some that have recently had an IPO, some have been around for a bit. They're big portions of our life. We really can't go a day without having our lives be affected by a nerd.
If you think about it now, it's actually changing the world. We've got a globalization that's never happened before. We have uprisings of people that are coming out of oppression and fighting dictatorship just because of the gadgets that nerds helped create.
These people are geeky, and they're the heroes of society in a lot of ways. And even though popular media likes to focus on things that aren't very real, they dig into these fluff pieces of life as an escapism. It's really the people that really make a difference in our day-to-day lives are the geeks, and they are the people, like you and me, that really make a difference in everything that we do.
Times are changing, Betty.